lugares, así empezamos en horario. Yo aquí estoy bien. Sí.
Claro, pero no. Ahí no lo vas a ver.
Pero ahí veo.
Sí.
Sí.
No, pero cuando
Y aquí no. Permítame, yo le pongo el texto y me dice
A
si
ver.
lo ve bien.
porque la otra opción es que
Está bien. Perfecto.
Gracias.
Por favor, tomen sus lugares, que ya empezamos. Gracias. ¿Cómo quema esta luz? ¿Quema esta luz? La luz quema. Sí. Sí. Señoras y señores, muy buenas noches.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to our inauguration of the 16th session of work and the Administration Council of the Latin American Association for Intellectual Property. We're going to introduce the members of our panel of honor. Enrique Diaz, President of ASIPI, Jorge Chavarro, President of the host committee, Matías Alemán, General Subdirector of Innovation and Ecosystems of Intellectual Property of OMI, Hugo Gomez, President of the Tribunal of Justice of the Community of Nations, at least for the Colombian Superintendents of Commerce, we'd like to thank you for the presence of representatives of government entities, Latin American associations, government entities, Maria del Socorro Pimienta, delegate of the Industrial and Property of the Superintendents of Industry and Commerce, Miriam Herman Brito, of the Dominican Republic, and Emi Ferreira of the Dominican Republic as well. The organizations and international associations, Patrick Coyne, outgoing president of AIPLA, Maria Scunjo, vice president of AIPPI, Mladen Vukmir, president of ECTA, Sharon Crane, general secretary of the FICPI board, Marco Matias Aleman, general sub-director of the innovation sector and ecosystems of intellectual property of OMPI, and Mirta Hurtado, president of PTMG. Representatives of Latin American associations, Álvaro Loureiro Oliveira, president of ABAPI Brazil, Marcos Mercado, president of ABPI Bolivia, Gabriel Leonardos, president of ABPI Brazil, Fernando Triana, president of ACPI in Colombia, Alejandra Valdez, president of ADOPI in Dominican Republic, Pablo Solinas, president of AEPI Ecuador, Juan José Méndez, president of AMPPI Mexico, Juan Efraín Ortiz, president of APAPI Paraguay, Mónica president of APPI Peru, Julio Vargas, president of ASPI in El Salvador, Pilar Ogarrio, president of CAMPI Guatemala, and Hugo Gomez, president of the Tribunal of Justice of the Andean Community. Authorities and offices of intellectual property, Loreto Bresky, director of INAPI in Chile, Salvador Lasami, director of RPI in El Salvador, Martina Everett Anthony, adjunct director of the Office of Intellectual Property of Curaçao, Tina Wavo, director of the Department of Brands of the Intellectual Property Office in Curaçao. We also welcome the ex-president of ASIPI present here, Martín Machaos, Fernando Triana, María del Pilar Troncoso, and Elizabeth Simpson do Amaral. We present the host committee, Jorge Chavarro, president, Fernando Triana, president of the academic committee and honorary president of the hosting committee, Consuelo Benjumea, Elena Camargo, José Roberto Herrera, Mónica Zuluaga, Andrés Márquez, Jimena Castellano, Natalia Castro, Gerardo Flores, Mauricio Jaramillo, Carlos Fernando Moreno, María Clara Múnera, Gustavo Ortega, Diana Romero, Martín Torres, Mónica Wolf de Cami. We'd like to also thank our sponsors, media sponsors, and supporting organizations that are with us in this event. The institutional sponsors, Aaron Fox Schiff, BCMB, Cavalier Abogados, Kahneman Simpson, Falcone Puig Abogados, lawyers, Goodrich Riquelme Asociados, Grimbaum, Posiñas y Taiseira, Palacios, Vanrel Intellectual Property. Platinum sponsors, Barlaw, Barrera and Associates, Brigadin Castro, Claravit Erickson, Jacobachi and Partners. Gold sponsors, Boletín Terrero, Consuelo Benjumea y Asociados, Di Blasi Parente Asociados, Hoagland y Pamías, PSC, MGA, Leo González y Asociados, Romero Corral Abogados, Sports Committee, Ideas, patrocinador expositor ABPI, AIPPI, Bill Trader, Clarivate Café de Colombia, University of New Hampshire, Franklin Pierce School of Law, Marca Sur, SIC, and Questel. Supporting sponsors, Café de Colombia, Greater Medellín Convention and Visitors Bureau, and the media sponsors, Marca Sur, World Intellectual Property Review, the Global IP Matrix and Women's IP World, and the sponsors of the cocktail on Tuesday, Brigadin Castro, Castellanos y Co., Castillo Grau Abogados, Cavalier Abogados, Consuelo Benjumea y Asociados, Contexto Legal, Cuesta Lawyers, Dentons, Cárdenas y Cárdenas, ECIJA Abogados, Gómez Pinzón Abogados, Herrera Díaz Abogados, Lloreda Camacho y Compañía, Mario Delgado Echeverry e Hijos, MPR Moreno Advisors, Olarte More, Pons IP, Poserra Ruiz, Provi Marcas, Rice Beck and Castro, Trena Uribe y Michelsen, Wolf Méndez Abogados Asociados. At this point, I'd like to invite you all to stand in order to hear the anthem of the Republic of Colombia.
A continuación,
Up next, I will call the members of the honored panel to hear a few words from them. The president of the hosting committee, Jorge Chavarro, please. Good evening, everyone. Distinguished members of the main panel. Ex-presidents of ASIPI, members of the executive committee, members of the administration council, government authorities, representatives of organizations and Latin American and international associations, authorities of the offices of industrial intellectual property, professors and judges of the tribunals of justice of Latin America, representatives of the Global Organization of Intellectual Property, OMPI, associates of ASIPI, attendants to this event, friends. On behalf of the hosting committee of this 23rd sessions of the ASIPI administration, as in homage to Peter Dirk Simpson, I welcome you cordially to Medellín, the city of eternal spring, the capital of the mountain of resilience, of reinvention, of creativity and innovation. I feel very pleased to receive you in this city, which is the center of the metropolitan area of the Aburrá Valley, the gathering of municipalities that is unique to its class, seeking the intensive use of information technologies for the creation and improvement of systems for the benefit of the quality of life of its citizens. A city that breathes intellectual property. It is a cradle to writers, singers, among singers, painters, artists, among them singers, painters, sculptors, headquarters for businesses associated to the fourth industrial revolution, of research centers, where a number a significant number of invention patents have originated, headquarters of business groups with robust portfolios of international brands. And why this city? And because this city breathes intellectual property, it is an ideal setting for, with all of you present here, to pay homage to a great of intellectual properties, which is Peter Dirk Siemsen. For him, I ask for a well-deserved and warm applause. Medellín, which has had to face very difficult periods, and thanks to the joint effort of all of its citizens, politicians, professionals, who were committed, each one with what they knew how to do, were able to make this land become reborn from its ashes. Now, in the organization of these sessions, we have all contributed inspiration, time, and dedication for you to feel comfortable and enjoy an interesting, varied academic program that is innovative and varied for all tastes, so that you can enjoy pleasant opportunities for networking during the social events. Because, as Paisas would say, and I suppose you all know that Paisa is how we refer to the people of this region, say no more, my sir. Here it is. If you want literature, we have the book fair. If you want flowers, we have the flower fair. If you want poetry, we have a festival of poetry. If you want sport, we have Rigoberto Urán, Mariana Pajón. If you want tango, here we saw the passing of Carlos Gardel. Paisas have the Casa Gardeliana, or the House of Gardel. If you want paint and sculpture, we have the Maestro Fernando Botero. If you'd like technology, we have Ruta N, where we work with the most important software companies of the world. If you want fashion, we have Colombia Moda. If you want party, this is the capital of reggaeton. Make the most of this. The cradle of J Balvin, Karol G, Maluma, among many others. If you want pop rock, you have Juanes. And so, welcome all. Truly, be welcome. And I hope that you learn and that you enjoy these sessions. Marco Matías Alemán, please.
Muchísimas gracias. Quisiera en primer
Thank you very much. I would first like to express our thanks to the different authorities, to the president of ASIPI, Enrique Diaz, our vice presidents, Luis Alejandro Enriquez and Jorge Chavarro, to the members of the executive committee of the, to the different national and regional authorities and the different representatives of association, to the members of the hosting committee and the members of ASIPI, and to each of you, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the General Director of the UMPI, Mr. Valentin, I'm pleased to express our satisfaction in participating in this 23rd work sessions and Administration Council of ASIPI, and share with you in this hopefully short opening message. I'd like to refer to three subjects: the situation of innovation on a global and regional scale, some challenges of the system, and some current opportunities of the system. On the first subject, to speak of the state of innovation, I think there are two subjects that are important: the efforts for investment in innovation and the requests in different categories of intellectual property as a proxy for innovation. Regarding investments, the investments in innovation continue to increase. The efforts on R&D on a global scale has not fallen as was expected due to the pandemic. On the contrary, during the pandemic, they increased 3.3%, as was the case of growth in 2020. But who are the actors of this global increase in innovation? If we analyze the first 10 countries of the Global Innovation Index, we find that one of the essential characteristics of all innovative economies is that the effort is made by both public and private entities. Let's take the first, the effort in public innovation. The government budgets of those 10 innovative economies just grew significantly in 2020. In 2021, the situation was a little bit different. We have some economies where the spending increases, as is the case of Korea and Germany, and other economies where there is a reduction, such as the case of Japan and the United States. On the private side, corporations in the top of investment in R&D increased their spending by nearly 10%, exceeding $900 billion US in 2021. Four industries were at the top of those significant increases in innovation. Information and communication technologies, hardware and electrical equipments, and in particular software and services, and then the pharmaceutical and biotechnological, and finally construction and metal industries. But what happens in our region, according to the Global Innovation Index in 2021, the report presented for 2022, actually only Chile is among the top 50 economies in that global ranking, followed by Brazil in the 54th, Mexico 58th, Colombia 63rd, Peru 65th, Costa Rica, Argentina, Dominican Republic in the following positions. Another topic, as we said, the requests for intellectual property as a proxy for innovation. Allow me to clarify. If we take into account that scientific publications increased significantly in 2021, reaching the record number of 2 million scientific publications in 2021, and requests for intellectual properties reached never before seen levels in 2021. I won't go into details on these numbers, but I will mention some that I think are relevant. Patents went from 1 million in 1995 to nearly 2 million in 2010, reaching 3 million in 2016 and 3.4 million requests in 2021. I believe that this number is extremely important. In terms of brands, 14 million requests for brand patents in 2021, with an important increase in offices in England, China, Brazil, Turkey, India, and the European Union. Of these, if we take these into account, 18 of the main offices saw an increase in 2021 when compared with 2020. Of these 20, 9 were medium income economies. And so the increase has been seen in all levels of development. In 2021, requests of brand residents were 24% of global requests, showing a capacity for resilience in the economies of the developed world and in the developing world. In terms of industrial designs, 1.2 million requests for designs, with an increase of 9.2% in 2021. Numbers which, in my opinion, are amazing. And so, if we take those two indicators, efforts for innovation and number of requests, as a proxy for the situation of innovation, we cannot be in a better moment in terms of innovation and intellectual property. And so let's look at the other two subjects that I propose. One, the challenges of the system. What are the challenges that we face, so that we might see what might be coming in the following years? First, difficulties in the multilateral systems. It's become more and more difficult to update the existing treaties and achieve negotiations in new treaties, and I believe that the alternatives that have been explored in terms of bilateral or regional systems of free trade, including intellectual property, such as informal systems for formalization through agreement in offices, although they produce progress, it is never such a significant progress as what is achieved through the multilateral methods.
The second challenge is the necessity to change the narratives of intellectual property. If we take a report headed The Greater Economy, outlet of 2020, that was produced by UNCTAD, the contribution of creative industries to the global economy was 3.1 of the global PIB. This shows that the creative products represented 3% and services 21% of the global exportations. And creative industries created 6.2 of the global employments, more than 50 million positions of employment. If we take the report of the European Union over the contribution of the industries that are intensive in intellectual property from 2017 to 2019, we see how the intensive industries in intellectual property employed 61 million people that generated another 20 million positions of employment additionally, which means 40% of the employments that were generated in Europe. And these companies paid an average 41% more than the wages of the companies that do not use intellectual property. They generated 47% of the PIB of the European Union, and they generated in trillions of euros the income of intellectual property industries. So how can there be a negative interaction in intellectual property when it's independent from the numbers that we have given that only contribute to the different regions around the world and globally? This means that something is happening in the system where it's easier through some different actions to be able to find the failures of the system than being able to highlight its great contribution. I believe that you, agents and lawyers of intellectual property, have a huge responsibility in this field, because you are closer. You are on the field where all the positive cases of success happen. Documenting these cases, being able to share it, being able to let it go through different mechanisms, through entities like UMPI, to be able to socialize them and at the same time be able to make an echo of them, is a way to be able to help to change that negative narrative. And finally, some opportunities. I know I'm going over the time, Mr. President, but this is how I will finish my intervention. In certain opportunities, the first one, the importance of industrial property in transactions of risk capital. In 2021, it was exceptional. The transactions of capital risk grew in 46%, more than 20,000 transactions with a value that goes above $680 million. Latin America and the Caribbean showed the greatest increase, 98% of growth of the transactions of capital in 2021, reaching record numbers of $16 billion. I believe that without a doubt, these transactions had a lot to do with the participations in the market where there were brands, or with the highest technology where there was some kind of involvement. Second opportunity, the opportunities that are offered through digitalization. We can see how the nature of new digital technologies that are normally called digital purpose technology, because its capacity of impact, also have the name of purpose technology because its capacity of impact go further than the specific area where they are created. We believe that it's not only behind the fourth age of industrial revolution, but it also opens important opportunities to the stakeholders and the actors of the system of intellectual property. The system of patents, using a proxy of innovation in this field, once again shows an explosion in the topic of digital purpose technology, going in 3 decades and from a contribution of 1% to the contribution of 6%, therefore becoming in one of the areas of the highest increase. Finally, the third opportunity is found in the topic of the intangible assets to be able to close the digital gap, a topic that with great assertion the organizers have foreseen as a central topic of the panel of tomorrow. So I wouldn't like to finish my intervention without saying that there's been very few times throughout our history to have these positive encounters like this where we have so much to celebrate. So thank you very much.
Antes de pasar la palabra
Giving the word, before giving the word to Womas, we will project a video from Medellín. Was for a moment.
ahora sí.
Now we proceed with the magistrate, Hugo Gomez. We want to invite you to the panel and to give your word. Good evening to all of you. I want to salute Enrique Diaz, President of the Committee Presidency. We want to greet also Marco Aleman, General Director of AMPI, Maria Socorro, who is the Director of Intellectual Property of Colombia, as well as all the different members of the Directive Board of ASIPI and all the members of this international organization. For the Justice Tribunal of the Andean Community, ASIPI is an organization which is an ally in the protection of intellectual property, and that is in the defense of the Andean system in the discussion of controversies. The Andean Court wants to thank ASIPI all the efforts that have been done with the object of defending its institutionality and the economical sustainability. In these minutes that I will have, I want to tell you that something that for some of you is a mystery, but for others is something quite clear. How the judges decide, what motivates them to read the normativity or the law in a way and not the other, what criteria dictate how the jurisprudence of Latin America. We want to tell you everything that goes behind these legal decisions. 14 years ago, the American judge Richard Posner wrote a book, How to Judge, how the judges decide, where they point out that the judges are not moral giants or intellectuals or prophets or oracles. They're not spokesmen or calculators. They're human workers, very human workers, and they react as humans. When I was a student in the Faculty of Law, and I read about the methods of interpretation of legal frameworks, historical, systematic, technological topics in law, I thought, with illusion, that the law was a science, and that the judges read a law with objectiveness. Objectiveness at 100% does not exist. Even if the judge makes all his efforts to be objective, the judge will read the law from his human being, from his own being, what he is, which means that his interpretation will be influenced, wanting it or not, in one way or another, even if it's imperceptible, by his personal perspective, his cosmovision of his life, his ideology, economical or political, his religion, his psychology, which means the traumas from his childhood, his temperament, if he's happy or not. In his book, he mentions studies that point out that it's possible to predict the votes of the judges in function of their political affinity, of the prestige they had in the university, and the experience they had as a lawyer or as an attorney, if they come from the north, the south, or if he was a prosecutor before being a judge, if he was grown in the rural zone or in an urban zone, the work from his parents, and other factors as his race, religion, gender, and personality. Through the votes and fundaments, we can know if a judge has a progressive trend or conservative trend in favor of a free market or the intervention of the state. The jurisprudence is created by human beings who see the positive right in function of their political convictions, their frustrations, their hopes, their intuitions and fears, their passions, hatreds, and even their personal story. They explain, for example, how some judges of the Supreme Court of the United States considered in 1973, in the case Roe v. Wade, that abortion was a constitutional right for women, while other judges from the same court and amongst the same constitution established in June of this year in the case of Gobbs that there is no constitutional right to abortion. What guides the criteria of the Indian court? If you check the interpretations of the last years, you will be able to see a trend towards a higher protections towards the rights of intellectual property. And this is due to the fact that the ideology, the cosmovision that is guided through the interpretation of the law and the Indian judges is the one of feeling themselves as Indian citizens, to feel themselves immersed in a process of integration. The Indian court has said that the law interpretation that guides us is not literal, it's ethological, in a way that the understanding of the law goes around promoting the elements that reinforce the economical and social integration, like the free trade, free competition, economical competition, and the well-being of the consumers. An example of this understanding is that the jurisprudence of the tribunal has differentiated the brand that is notorious with the objective of giving a protection in law. They have established criteria to be able to solve a conflict amongst a commercial brand that is registered in a trademark with the purpose of generating a better security in terms of the law, and they have reinforced the parallel competence to be able to generate an intra-brand competition. They have generated a registration of three-dimensional brands, color brands, industrial designs, and works of applied art to be with the purpose that the intellectual property is used to restrict sometimes the competition. They have pointed out that giving a mandatory license have to go through the test of proportions, which means that the test of each statal measure that pretends to limit a right or a freedom. They have precised what understands to the public communication of works to be able to protect the authors. And I want to end up mentioning that for the Indian Tribunal, it's important the relationship that is maintained with ASIPI. Let's keep on together throughout the path that is taking us to a scenario where a higher protection of intellectual property generates a greater economical development, higher productivity, innovation, and competitivity, and more employment, least poverty, which means a greater well-being for all of us. Thank you very much. Next, we want to invite Maria del Socorro Pimienta, the delegate of the Superintendency of Industry and Commerce. Good evening. For the Superintendency of Industry and Commerce, it is a privilege to be able to be present here, to be represented, and to have been kindly invited by the Inter-American Association of Intellectual Property, and above all, for being represented by a person, in this case, Maria del Socorro Pimienta, that for 30 years has seen the path of this entity in the search of its better way to provide rights of industrial property and its best way to assume its role in the public so that the industrial property has the positioning that it currently has in Colombian society, in public policy, and in the business development. It is a privilege for me to be here, and I thank the association and especially all the directive committee that considered the superintendency as an authority in the local level. The most important element, after all the thanks that have been given, is to precisely reassure, recognize, and declare in a simply but categorically that the industrial property is more important, has a greater incidency in these times in the decision making transversally. This applied economically, socially, politically, in all the different instances that you might even not imagine. When you're within the heart of the superintendency and you see through the years the going around the roles of the directive boards that have gone once and over through the preservation of a robust system, through the adjustment of the dynamic of markets, but also recognizing effectively the incidency of intellectual property in all the different instances. That is definitely something important, and aside of this, transcendental, to be able to show it, recognize it, and throughout these times to be able to reassure it and declare it. For the superintendency, it is a fundamental element to have industrial property in all the different areas. There is nowhere where we can put aside the industrial property and incidency. And it's important to say that the industrial property is not only a legal framework, and this legal framework must be robust in the protection of rights to its owners in the respect of those rights of exclusivity, but it must also become a tool for intellectual property to be for everyone, which means that social responsibility that goes within the exercise of private property. Therefore, for us, in these moments of change, probably many of you will be asking what kind of change. All types of changes, directive boards, political policy lines, but the most important element is that the authority nowadays preserves the existence of a broad framework. It preserves the rights of the owners, the importance in the decision makers in industrial property, and above this, that it works in all the different cases to be dynamic in the appliance of these dispositions, and that intellectual property really is for everyone. And this, of course, not only makes us administrators of the system, but also agents of innovation. The superintendency today thanks all of you for allowing us to be present, but I believe that all of us give something to the ecosystem of intellectual property. Each one from its role can assure that they're doing something important for the economical and social development of the country. But I believe that the most important part that at this moment that the superintendency must ensure are those features that it's had for years of being a technical entity at the moment of decision making more than being political. I believe that in a certain way this has been reflected throughout all our years in the sense that we have given new decisions and de-decisions where Colombia has always been there supporting in the negotiation of treaties, multilateral and multinational, and especially in the task of international cooperation hand-to-hand with OMPI and many other organizations. Therefore, this evening, I want to thank for the opportunity of being here, representing the superintendency. The superintendency also wants to thank for the privilege of being considered for these effects. And we are sure that in the next years, we will have many challenges, but the entity will ensure the legal framework that is established, and it will always go towards the promotion of industrial property within the system of innovation, and of course, it will guarantee the respect to the different rights without forbidding the fulfillment of social responsibility that we are attached to. Thank you very much.
We thank all of the members of our honored panel for their words, and we invite to conclude the President of ASIPI, Enrique Diaz. Thank you, Matias. Esteemed members of the panel and the Executive Committee, national authorities, international authorities, national and international associations, Subdirector of OMPI, esteemed friends and associates. When I found out that Medellín would be the location, and when we decided that it would be our location, the first thing I thought was how I would open my talk or my speech. As a lover of the urban genre, I even thought of the crazy idea of singing, but some friends and people I love reminded me that I don't know how, and I didn't think it would be right to go through that embarrassment here. So I decided to work with or base this on the work of the association. It's a pleasure to be here in the beautiful city of Medellín and open the 23rd work sessions of the administration beloved associations. And just as we left with Costa Rica in conflict because we're told our friend was Mexican and not from Costa Rica, now we have a debate with Jorge Chavarro because I say that the city of eternal spring is in Mexico, in Cuernavaca, and not Medellín, but it's something we will discuss. I give you the most cordial of welcomes and invite you to participate in each of the activities that we have organized with a lot of enthusiasm and love, and which will take place in the following 3 days of our event. It's important to highlight that this event has taken place and has been organized and helps us to work with each of the members of this association. These sessions close a year of intense work developed by each of you through your participation in our committees, programs, as activities that were the result of initiatives generated from the very heart of our association, its members. Up next, we present a brief summary through images of the actions, advancements, and the achievements that we've had at the end of this first year of management. These sessions close an intense year of productive work developed by each of you through your participation in our committees and programs, as well as in activities that have been generated from the very heart of our association, its members. Up next, we present a brief summary through images of the actions, the advancements, and achievements that we have obtained at the end of this first year of management. In this second half of the year, ASIPI has participated in the annual congresses of diverse associations of intellectual property, both national and international, that we've been invited to. On the 22nd and 23rd of August, we were present in the annual Congress of the Brazilian Council of Intellectual Property, BPI, where we established an agreement for collaboration, which is a framework for joint projects. In our visit to Brazil, we had a meeting with the director of the National Institute of Intellectual Property of said country, and we also signed an agreement for collaboration with said institution. This process promoted by our Commission. Our presence in Brazil has been constant throughout the second part of the year with the objective of coming closer to professionals of intellectual property. With this objective, we've confirmed our participation in the International Congress organized by the Paulista Association of Intellectual Property, ASPI, as well as in the National Gathering of Professionals of Intellectual Property organized by the Brazilian Association of Agents of Intellectual Property, ABAPI, whose event we carried out in homage to our past president, Elizabeth Ciensen do Amaral. Another of the national associations of intellectual property that we shared with this year was the Argentinian Association of Intellectual Property, AAPI. And so from the 10th to the 3rd, we were present in BPI. ASIPI in San Francisco, city which was witness to the signing of the first agreement celebrated between both organizations, and which we will be placing into execution through activities in 2023. Also, in the month of September, we participated in the annual Congress of FIP Association, with which we formalized a long relationship of collaboration with the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding, whose execution is also underway through the coordination of a webinar cycle until 2023, among other activities. Finally, this year we were present in the annual congresses of ECTA and APA, with whom we had been communicating for agreement under the work scheme that we've proposed to other sister associations, and which will allow us to execute coordinated actions for the benefit of intellectual property and in favor of each of our associates. In our quality of observers of the OMP, in July we were present in the 23rd session of the member states in Geneva. In this visit, we had the opportunity to meet with officials of this institution to talk about matters of interest to our region. We also continue to be present and active in the meetings of the WIPO, which this year carried out its gatherings in the Alicante city in October and recently in the month of November. We had a highlighted participation as co-organizers of the second edition of the Moot Court on the right of intellectual property, together with the Justice Tribunal of the Andean Community and Inca. 27 teams from 9 nations faced a jury of members of national delegates, 16 judges that participated in the written phase, recently in the oral phase of this session, which concluded on the 30th of November. We were also present as a supporting institution in the first moot court organized by the Supreme Justice Court, inter-university competition. We participated within our agreement with the esteemed court. For the 4th consecutive year, ASIPI has been participating as a supporting entity in the National Competition of Inventions 2022 organized by Intercopi Peru. As part of this competition, ASIPI will award the best patent, a green patent, a category which we have been promoting since 2019 and which will be honored this Friday as part of the activities of the Green ASIPI program. We also have another competition on authors' rights, launching in Peru the first national competition for comics. ASIPI was also present, supporting, and we are pleased to continue supporting these initiatives that allow us to incentivize and award intellectual creatives. In terms of competition, this Monday we will have the honor of awarding the competition, the Best Industrial Designs 2022, organized by our association in collaboration with the Academic Network of Design of Colombia, an event that has been promoted by the Committee of Industrial Committee and Trade of our association. We must mention our participation in other events carried out in different parts of our region, where we were invited by other institutions. And so ASIPI is a point of reference in intellectual property for the Americas, and ASIPI Emprende carried out a set of training workshops with different entities related to the entrepreneurship in the region. And so we managed the signing of agreements with the Association of Entrepreneurs of Honduras and a campaign and social network seeking to raise awareness. ASIPI Academia concluded its second period of 2022 with the development of 3 courses. Legal advancements on brand rights, intellectual property, valuation and monetization of intangibles. Second part, 3 courses, curriculums of which have been carefully designed to transmit not just theoretical knowledge, but mainly practical content. These courses have gathered prestigious speakers throughout the world and have allowed us to offer content as part of our objective of training. ASIPI Educa has focused on creation of institutional videos for the promotion of the program. One of the videos was launched on the 1st of December and has the goal of raising awareness on the program among the associates so that they might join and collaborate with the raising of awareness in young people of school age. The second video is directed to the students and will be used in the training sessions that will take place in schools. The material that will be used for these classes has been reviewed and updated, and its final versions will be used in the following trainings. Our trainings continue, and as we have done here in Medellín as well, thanks to the initiative of ASIPI Pro Bono and ASIPI Emprende. On the 2nd of December, the auditorium of the University of Medellín was the stage for training for entrepreneurs and pro bono clinics, through which we not only provided information on intellectual rights, but also the viability of protecting these creations through our program Pro Bono. In 2020, when we were all affected one way or another by COVID-19, ASIPI proposed the development of programs that offered our associates a space for an enjoyment and gathering to share their actions in difficult times. And so this is how we implemented the ASIPI clubs, which are completely consolidated now thanks to the work of leaders who have incorporated the participation of important representatives of industries related to the club. On another end, we created ASIPI Fit, a program that seeks to provide its associates tools in order to carry out or maintain a healthy thanks to physical training, and now with yoga sessions, which we officially share with our in-person events. During 2022, we have completed the addition of 40 webinars, 24 of these carried out between June and November of this year, with a total participation of over 5,500 speakers. That is 5,500. The webinars have been mostly proposed by our work committees, who are the engine of the association, and we've been able to offer them together with other sister associations and expand their presence to other regions. Along the same line, we have maintained the production of our ASIPI podcasts, which now add to the additions called Face to Face, a space for relaxed interviews with people who have contributed especially to the development of our association. During this year, with an important investment of time during the second semester, we've worked on the new image of our virtual library, which was open to the world now. In the gathering of the Executive Council celebrated in Costa Rica, we made the decision to allow visual access of content of our library to all those who might visit. For our associates, we've reserved the possibility to download the documents. This new image is accompanied by a restructuring and a classification of our material, which is now organized as institutional, publications, audiovisuals, and interactive resources. And so we invite you to be content creators, as you've done in the second part of the year. Many committees, associates, and students of ASIPI Academia contributing to enriching of this consultation space that ASIPI has made available to the community. Another one of the projects that we've worked on throughout the semester was the second interactive map on associations of collective management in Latin America and Spain, an initiative of the authors' rights committees, which has the objective of showing in a simple and interactive manner to the associations that represent authors' rights in the countries that are on the map. Finally, in terms of publications, we feel very happy to have realized another one of the projects proposed for this year. Our institutional magazine, Mundo ASIPI. Through Mundo ASIPI, we share articles, interviews, news, stories, and much more. A new space to share among the members of our association and a point of reference for other associations. This second semester has been witness to the realization of national panels. These panels have the purpose of covering a specific subject of special interest due to its relevance to specific countries, and we've carried out 9 panels in Chile, Mexico, Brazil, Costa Rica, Ecuador, the United States, Paraguay, and Argentina. We've dedicated a lot of time to the homogenization and centralized management of our social networks, which allow us to keep our members updated, as well as the entire world, regarding all of the activities that are being carried out throughout this year. Today, with joy, we see the results of this effort in the exponential growth of our followers and social networks and the interactions that we've achieved through our posts. And so we invest in the realization of our institutional video, which allows us to communicate to the world who we are, what we do, and why we are the voice of intellectual property and a point of reference in the Americas and on a global scale. This year, we decided to formalize a new sponsorship program, which we launched on the 1st of August with successful results. This new program incorporates institutional sponsorships as well as the sponsorship of events, and has been structured keeping in mind the best benefit for those who participate with us. The sponsorship program has served and will continue to serve for the continuous development with the excellence of each of our programs. Thanks to the contribution of our sponsors, we have been recognized as one of the most innovative and constant associations or entities in intellectual property, and we want to continue this with the support of our sponsors. One of the goals that we had at the beginning of this process was to consolidate our presence in the associations of the region. Universities are the workshops that develop those who will eventually lead on these subjects of intellectual property. They are the next generation that we must train on this subject. For this goal, we have begun communicating with universities for joint activities and the formalization of collaboration projects. In this last semester, we have consolidated, thanks to the participation of many of our delegates, relationships with the Universidad Católica and the International University of Ecuador, Universidad Francisco Marroquín, and Universidad Rafael Mandila of Guatemala, and Universidad de Lima in Peru. In addition to the agreement celebrated with sister associations, authorities, and universities, ASIPI has began collaboration agreements with other entities like the Industrial Association of the Opportunistas or Clothing Manufacturers in Paraguay and the Pro Bono Association. We've also signed agreements with the Chamber of Digital Economy in Uruguay, thereby initiating an important approach with our community of diversity in digital worlds. ASIPI is not foreign to social challenges. We have begun the campaign Una Mochila, Una Oportunidad, proposed by our Committee for Social Action for the in-person event of ASIPI in 2022 and 2023. The first campaign was carried out in Costa Rica, collecting over 40 backpacks which were donated to schools in said countries. Now in Medellín, we hope to double that number and continue bringing smiles to kids and teenagers of low resources. Together with the backpacks, the Social Committee, and the ASIPI Fit program, we have been able to consolidate our 5K marathon begun in 2021 in Punta Cana. The resources obtained are destined for the obtainment of resources that will be donated to the local schools as well. In Medellín, the date in which we will carry out our race will coincide with the Global Soil Day, which will allow us to join in the participation of conserving a healthy soil. Also, during our in-person event, ASIPI has been carrying out the campaign of ASIPI Verde, Green ASIPI, with policies for the use of the minimal amounts of printed material and the recycling of products that can be reutilized. Finally, ASIPI has given visibility throughout this year to the commitment that it has to diversity and inclusion in our association.
So thanks to the collaboration of the members of the Committee of Diversity, Inclusion, and Sustainability, we have come together through our social media to the international celebrations that are done to be able to bring consciousness into the problems that we have in these fields and the recognition for all of those that have been fighting for these causes. And finally, for the first time, we have included as part of our additional activities to our program in the event, Come as you are. Be authentic. That has as a purpose to celebrate those differences that enrich us and the pride of being who we are. This is an event organized by the Committee of Diversity, Inclusion, and Sustainability. Another of the actions that were completed in this semester was the election of new arbiters for ASIPI. That in the appliance of the selection of referees, the team was formed by 12 official referees that represent different jurisdictions of our region. Finally, and with a lot of pride, we want to inform the growth that we've had in terms of the association with the incorporation of 48 new associates, overpassing for the first time the barrier of 2,000 associates.
Nos pareció que la mejor forma de dar por
We believe that the best way to be able to initiate and give the inauguration to these days of work and administration of ASIPI was a sample of the work that has been done. Thank you very much for each second that has been given in pro of the association and in pro of a better system of intellectual property. With this, we initiate the activities, and I want to ask all the members of the board to be able to come, and I want to ask Megan Carpenter to be able to join us, if you're so kind.
como recordarán.
As you might all remember, at the beginning of the management in Punta Cana, one of the main axles was to monetize. If, well, everything that we have spoken in terms of monetization, in terms of intellectual property, we must always remember that we also try to get the maximum benefit of each one of our supports. That's what we call as monetize. That's why today, with the hand of the University of Franklin Pierce, with my dear Megan Carpenter here, we want to launch the first MOU, official MOU, that is official and that will be signed by ASIPI and the university, where all the associates of ASIPI will have the opportunity of participating for different prizes throughout the time of 5 years. Now, what kind of prizes? Prizes with a value of $1.2 million in terms of courses in the University of Franklin Pierce, an agreement that was never given with the university with any other association as ASIPI. This is why we want to show you a brief video and afterwards give some words to Megan Carpenter.
ASIPI siempre se ha caracterizado.
ASIPI has always been characterized for being with the best and always being side to side with the best. That's why at the beginning of this management, we committed the efforts in the main axes and pillars of strengthening processes and institutes of our ways of work and the monetization. Monetizing is not only to monetize the assets of intellectual property, but it's also to work in each one of the supports that you give towards this association. We believe and we firmly sustain that training is the main pillar for a better world in terms of intellectual property. a better system, a better development, but above all, be able to attain a better harmonization with solid basis. This is why today, in hand-to-hand with Megan Carpenter, we have the honor and the pride of announcing a program without any precedents. Today, we will sign an MOU between ASIPI and the University of New Hampshire, Franklin.
New Hampshire leads the IP world in so many ways. We were founded nearly 50 years ago with IP as a core focus. We graduate future leaders in the IP field who are working across the United States and in over 80 countries around the world. Our alumni have led IP at places like Bayer, Pepsi, Disney, Microsoft, Samsung, LG, and have been at the forefront of IP policy in Argentina, Taiwan, Japan, and Nigeria. And we are so proud that many of our alumni are in top positions in law firms across Latin America. Creemos en el trabajo de ASIPI.
We believe in the work of ASIPI, and we're proud of their friendship and alliance. We hope we can grow in our relationship and be able to transform the global scope of intellectual property. Together, we promote intellectual property, and the challenges will become and opportunities. Thank you very much. Hello, I'm Francisco Rebo of Lima, Peru. I'm from the class of Franklin Pierce, 2001, and what I want to highlight in the stay of Franklin Pierce, aside of my friends I made, was the opportunity of living in a small town that helped me in a personal experience that was amazing, as well as the master's degree in the studies, which I believe were very, very useful. My name is Diego Lucia from Argentina, MIP. I graduated in 1994, and for me, Franklin Pierce was an amazing experience for everything that I had to do as my professional field in a wonderful surrounding, Gouts country. It was named by a great professor, and that's where I built friendships that remained with me for all my life. Hi, my name is Julian Stones from Dominican Republic, and I want to tell you that if you're contemplating of making a master's degree in intellectual property, Franklin Pierce will be the best and only option. You will count with the best teachers in intellectual property, with an amazing academical program, and with an amazing surrounding. Hello, Franklin Pierce was an amazing experience in my formation in topics of intellectual property. I was graduated in the 90s. With great inspirers as Carl Jordan and many others that at that moment were pioneers in the management of intellectual property and academical promotion of this field. Afterwards, I had the opportunity to visit once again as a visiting professor in summer school. It was an amazing experience for all of us that have been there. It gives us a wider horizon, particularly focused to be able to take back or give back a vision of development attached to intellectual property and be able to take this to the countries of Latin America. Franklin Pierce was a brilliant experience, and we want to invite you all to consider it as an experience of academical formation and training. Would you recommend to study in the University of Franklin Pierce? Well, my name is Alejandra Valdez. I was graduated in 2001. Franklin Pierce was an amazing experience where I not only host excellent memories of teachers, but I also have unforgettable memories. I'm Estoli Serre from Argentina, and I studied in Franklin Pierce between the year 2003 and 2004. I obtained an element. And I am Franklin Pierce. I always felt at home. I found great colleagues and friends, and I could study in great deepness with great professionals. In Franklin Pierce, I lived one of the most interesting years of my life. Hello, my name is Juliana Resilena of Panama. In the year 1999, I made a study in intellectual property in Franklin Pierce. In the year that I made my master's degree, the university was ranked as #1 in intellectual property in the United States. I remember I made an extensive comparison research with other universities, and none of them had such a complete program and extensive program in intellectual property as Franklin Pierce. The level of their professors is unbeatable. In Franklin Pierce, I received an education of first hand and first level that complemented my academical formation, and it's been the spear of my professional life. I also want to mention that it opened the doors for an international network of professionals, friends, and colleagues that I still keep up to the moment. I'm Ricardo Fisher, MIP of Franklin Pierce, 1993. It was a great experience. I made the program throughout all the year. I lived for 1 year in Cole, Hampshire, a beautiful and peaceful town. I had the opportunity of meeting excellent professors, classmates. Many of them are still great friends of mine. And aside of this, the academical content was phenomenal. It was probably my first deep contact with all the topic of intellectual property. So any person that has in their mind a master's degree in the United States, I want to recommend Franklin Pierce.
Los testimonios de
Now, the testimonies of the graduated students are a surprise for me, and I am very sure that our students are the best around the world. I want to thank you for inviting us here.
who is our IP Center Director. He directs our IP program and really works with me to create the vision. And I'm here with Sarah Dorner, who is our Director of Admissions and International Outreach. También les doy las...
I also want to thank Enrique, Ricardo, Luis, and
over the past, 4 or 5 years about how we at Franklin Pierce can make an investment and partner across Latin America, because the challenges that we face across the world are certainly global challenges that are so often involving issues of intellectual property. And we believe that kind of a global education is one that will help us as practitioners and as students, lifelong students of intellectual property, help us to address many of these challenges. I'm so grateful to ASIPI for the leadership, and it is humbling to see the video that of all of the accomplishments of ASIPI over the last years. And we are so pleased to be a part of the future of this organization. We decided, as we've been talking over the last few years, that let's just do it. Let's figure out a way to make an investment and to make something happen. I believe that whether you are, if you are an alum and you're here, and if you're not an alum, you are here, you probably work with someone or have worked with someone who went to Franklin Pierce. Whatever your stage in your career, we want to provide opportunities to you all and to your colleagues to work toward the education that will benefit you, benefit your clients, and help advance your career. So I want to talk a little bit about the 3 different categories of scholarships that Enrique mentioned as part of this agreement. First, many of you have attended IPSI, the IP Summer Institute, and Mickey was instrumental in leading the charge to bring back IPSI a few years ago, actually, at the start of the pandemic. We're now doing IPSI both online and in person. Sometimes we do it at our beautiful campus you saw in Concord, New Hampshire. And sometimes we'll do it in other places. This summer, we're going to be spending 2 weeks in San Francisco, and you're welcome to join us. We will address some of the emerging topics in the field of IP, and we'll also do a deep dive for practitioners into issues of licensing, for example. And so what we announced tonight are 3 full scholarships for ASIPI members to attend the IP Summer Institute, either online or in person or both. And we're going to be doing that every year for the next 5 years. I also want to announce that we will be giving some of you have attended our master's program, MIP or LLM. We're going to be giving 2 full scholarships each year for the next 5 years to ASIPI members. And ASIPI will be working to develop a writing competition to award these scholarships. And finally, we have developed a JD, which is the US law degree, that is mostly online. And it is the United States' first specialized law degree that's been accredited by the ABA, and it's in IP. So it is a JD in intellectual property, technology, and information law. And it allows you to get a US JD from wherever you're located while you keep your day job, while you're able to sort of work education around your work hours. And all you need to do residence-wise is to come to the United States 4 times a year for kind of 4 to 5 days at a time. We do it over long weekends. You meet phenomenal people as a part of this program. You network with our alumni, and you get really exciting opportunities. We will be giving each year for the next 5 years 1 full scholarship to get a US JD from wherever you are located. And we're so proud to be able to partner with ASIPI to do this. And we look forward to a bright future ahead for this partnership. Thank you so much, Enrique. I can't.
Con esto damos por iniciada.
And with this, we start with our working days.
Bueno, con las palabras de nuestro presidente damos por
So with the words of our presidents, we will finish the celebration of inauguration of this 23rd days of work in the Council of Administration and homage for Peter Vincentson. And we want to welcome our keynote speaker, Mr. Nelson Osorio Lozano, who is with us today here to be able to give us some words.
Medellín, el relato
Medellín, the resilient story. Dr. Nelson Osorio is an attorney of the University El Rosario from Bogota. He has been a diplomatic amongst the Holy Side in Rome, a cultural advisor of the organization Ardila Lule, private secretary of the Ministry of International Affairs in the government of Antioquia, an academical of history, author, speak noter. He has diverse condecorations and international recognitions. Since 2020, he's the general curator of collections in the art room of the Group of Bancolombia. With you, Dr. Nelson Osorio Lozano from Osorio Lozano Consultancy, SAS Colombia.
Bien. Muy buenas noches a todos.
Very well. Good evening to all of you. Licensed and President, we have 2 cities of the eternal spring, the beautiful Cuernavaca. How to forget the gardens of Borda that made the delicacy of the imperial majesty Maximiliano and other adventures, but also Medellin is a full garden of eternal spring. So Latin America has the capacity to have 2 cities of eternal spring, the beautiful Cuernavaca of the imperial years of Maximiliano and our beautiful Medellin. I was an attorney in another life, and I shared the university classrooms with some of the magnificent jurists that we have here. And I say in another life because the law took me right into other disciplines. First, diplomacy in an embassy. Dr. Aleman, you live close to the Palais de la Paix. In an embassy that is destined to precisely speak about peace and concordance, especially in the Holy Side, where I was representative of Colombia for almost 10 years. When I came back from the Vatican, I was not the same person, but not because there were callings that were awakened, but because I migrated towards responsibilities around humanism and culture, And nowadays, I can say that if, well, my attorney disciplines are connecting me with you, with my colleagues, with my brothers of the world of justice and rights,
I live among art, among paintings, among culture, and talking about the region and the city that gave me the life that I have, the pride to lead and carry in my blood. We're happy to have you here in Colombia and in Medellín, which is a resilient city and a different city. I'm inspired by this flower. I think of, in Humboldt and its taxonomists and botanicals, who, without ever coming to the Valley of Flowers, knew that the most spectacular orchids in the world were among these mountains, hidden among volcanic soils, bathed by these pure waters of the Andes that fell from our snowy mountains. The Catleya Triane, the great flower of Colombia, for over 100 years, the national flower, classified by a botanical expert who has a last name that some of you may remember, Jose Jeronimo Triana. I think I'm talking about your great-grandfather, Fernando, and it's an honor to have you here contemplating a modern design that reminds us of the national flower, the Catleya Triane flower. But I speak not only of flowers, but of the origin of the city, illustrated in the past, perhaps with a marvelous freshness, with presides and has presided for over 10 years the sessions of the mayor's office of the city. We went to Mexico, President, and from the Rivera we learned the murals, and next to the Rivera and Frida we had our Pedro Gomez and his Italian model. Upon returning from Mexico, we also wanted to tell our story in the walls. And here we have the origin, a naked community that fed from fruit and covered their naked bodies in flowers. It was so idyllic, the valley of Castillos and Veras, that not even the areas of Castilla could ever overcome it. The great conqueror, Mr. Jorge Robledo, saw it from afar and decided to ignore this paradise and leave 100 more years in the purity of wildlife and primordial life among so much. This forgotten corner saw the rise of two rival cities that hated one another and disputed the condition of the pendant of Castilla and the royalty of Spain. A mother city is how we know it, Santa Fe, the Antiochian. With this marvel of the imagination of our Spanish fathers to use the names of the Bible. We have Jericho, Jerusalem, names from Spain, Segovia, Zaragoza, but truly to reach the Greek, Alexandria, Antioquia, that required a lot of imagination. We have in Antioquia, in our pronunciation, mother city, Santa Fe de Antioquia, of imperial foundation, 1540. And the other rival, Santiago de Arma del Rosario of Rio Negro, also a city of gold, Spanish of Abolengos, and in the middle, neighborhood of San Lorenzo, Sitio de Anas, indigenous community and colonizers who dreamed one day that between Mother City and Rio Negro we might see the rise of Terceria, that Canberra, that Washington, that would not face the two halves of the great Antioquia. We were intelligent. The three families of Medellín located in this region, we reached out to the Queen, Her Catholic Majesty Mariana de Austria, of Felipe IV, and of the most Mr. Carlos Lechezan with his great power.
Nuestra reina católica, la reina Mariana.
And with Queen Mariana, who heard those neighbors who, in the style of Hueto de Juna, all crossed to kiss the feet of Her Catholic Majesty and beg that these 10 homes that made up the area of the Burales would be given that name of La Candelaria. It is the year of 1675. Think how remote regarding the refoundation of the Great Mexico, Tenochtitlan, or Santa Fe de Bacata, or Lima. It's been over 150 years of Spanish conquest, and our homes through our founder, Queen Regent Mariana de Austria, the title of Villa de la Candelaria, dedicated to her friend, her advisor in Ministry of the Council of Indias, Mr. Pedro Conde de Medellín, Medellín de Extremadura, of the great Hernán Cortés. We share that wonderful title with a small city of Mérida, which, like ours, carries that title, the home of Hernán Cortés, of flowers and the progress of a nation that did not exist yet. Our blasón was designed directly by the dames and covered in gold. Queen Mariana, the Catholic queen, the Queen Regent Mother, for over 50 years of the Habsburg throne, she dedicated her personal shield, La Torre de Castilla, illuminated by the powerful mantle of the lady of the fire of La Presentación, Los Alamares, and the colorful blazons distinguish our shield, which would be donated to the villa of the Queen. The villa of the Queen continued in her dream, on a realized dream, with the mother city and Rio Negro. They were powerful and rich. We were nothing to them, but we had to bring from the glorious Mompox close to Cartagena de Indias a liberator, an important one, an imported one, but one that became ours. Mr. Juan del Corral, our first patriot, our emancipator of liberty. It is nearly 1815. It has been 5 years of Hidalgo, 7 years since the revolutions in Bolivia, in Quito, and Santa Fe de Antioquia and Rio Negro. Have doubts about separating from Spain. I must say that we were the last region of the New Granada to make the decision to say goodbye to our fathers, to say goodbye to Spain, a region of a deep Basque component, Asturian and Castilian. We thought about it very much until it was finally some Momposino of birth and Antiochian forever, Juan del Corral. Among us, one of his inheritors, he was our first liberator, our president dictator. He quickly understood that freedom would be the flagship of this region. And Antioquia, which had just had a small mine for the empire, it would be called to great things. Juan del Corral, 1815, Declaration of Independence of the Sovereign Republic of Antioquia. The Sovereign Republic of Antioquia would be a part of the great project of Bolivar. We are Andean, President Hugo. Like you in Junin, one of our main avenues is called Junin, like your Peruvian land, like your region, and we followed the dream of Bolivar, here the acquisition of the great Antioquia, the conversion, the transformation into the great Antioquia of the Amazon. Will be forgiven for having part of Loreto, part of the Napo, part of the Amazon, Imalaos, our great Istmo of Panama, the coast of Nicaragua, and our history in our archipelago of San Andres and the old Providence, the Colombia, of which the province of Antioquia has adhered to and has kept as one of its 9 states that covers up to the Atlantic coasts, and the department separated of Caldas, Risaralda, Quindío, the north of Tolima, and north of the Valle al Cauca, the cultural Antioquia, the human Antioquia, the diverse Antioquia, the large Antioquia, of which Medellín is a proud capital since 1825. Our first richness and wealth, a combination of our grain that has arrived through the French Antilles with these volcanic mountainsides, these crystal clear waters, our dark gold transported on mules through the challenging mountains of the land of Antioquia, a state which only has 15% of farmable area in flat grants. We had to find a way to communicate it through the vast difficulties that nature brought it. It is a land of solutions because it is built. It is full of great problems that have to be overcome. This gold isn't just black, it's gold in itself. With Peru and the Great Peru, we have contributed to the vast Spanish Empire, and it continues to be one of our main sources of income. And one of the legends of Antiochian wealth is gold. The possibility to communicate with the center of Colombia, distant by 1 month on horseback through our territories. We had to think that it was the two vast rivers, Magdalena and Cauca, that would be the only possibility to communicate with the rest of the country. We knew we were wealthy and prosperous, but we did not have a way to carry to the rest of Colombia our message of prosperity and the Antiochian perspective to the world. The large river of La Magdalena, our fluvial artery of 1,000 kilometers from Barranquilla to Huila, here crosses our port, our door to the world, our Puerto Berrío, and the steam navigation, the Fulton invention and the special design of Robert Fulton for the rapids of the Magdalena River, and our ancestral port, Berrío, and the possibility to open up to the world after 3 centuries of lethargy. Our black gold of Colombia, the gold invested in coffee, transported by the river and mules to the entire world in the form of the best pure grain of the world, Antioquia, the coffee region by excellence in the coffee growing country by excellence. Soon the fluvial method would not be enough. It was the first Colombian region connected by train. We saw the first railroads that led to our Puerto Berrío, covering the Andes, reaching over 3,000 meters, crossing our mountains. Our French station, our North American railroads, our of Antioquia in the heart of Medellín, took us to the river, and from the river to the ocean, and from the ocean to the world. And so here we have another one of the origins of our power, this small wooden device where, together with the great indigenous tradition of knitting and sewing and joining, the folks of Castilla and Euskadi taught us to make the best fabrics of this part of the world. Tropical Antioquia contributed cotton. The industrious hands of our artisans among the Basque and the Spanish and the indigenous learned to sew like no other. And we also thought in the 20th century about what to do with a society built on a world that was broken by mountains but full of water. The solution was in sight. We went to Switzerland, we went to France, we went to the north of Italy, and we took the perfect idea of the currents of water that fell over our rocks, which were undoubtedly sacred. They weren't it wasn't a misfortune to live among rocks and waterfalls. On the contrary, living among this water would allow us to make this into a place of production, a place of wealth, a place of hydro generation. If Paris is the city of light, here is the light for the city. The first city completely electrified in Colombia in 1910. We had a plant, original plant in the lab here of Edison, which found in Medellín, where light was an activity of the private order, the Semper Prosh. Since 1910, we had our very primitive lighting for. It was completely electrified. In our size, we had the same electric capacity of Kansas City, of St. Louis, and New Orleans by 2015. The secret: rocks and water that fall in the form of energy. And the possibility to generate wealth and empowerment in this marvelous city also generated a current of social thought. Here we got the arrival of mutualism and cooperative organization. Here we see the arrival of family subsidy, unionization, with great figures like the great woman Maria Cano, flower of the work of 1925, the beginning of social awareness to truly create social peace and to resolve the social tensions that could become an obstacle to our times. Our painters have reflected Medellín as a cradle of social movement and awareness that we can go through together in a city of harmonies. It is also represented by pro hombre, people who, far from a paternalist perspective, represented progress, equality, inclusion, and in 1920s terms, we might even say innovation. Mr. Alejandro Chavarria, first textile entrepreneur of the nation, father of Colombiana de Tejidos, Coltejer, and together with his partner in dreams, Tobero Mejia, from aeronautic projects to the road to the sea, the first chemical factories and the use of gold for chemical and physical use, together with our liberator Gonzalo Mejia, Alejandro Chavarria. An event of war and death seems like something tragic which should not detonate in devolution or the loss of wealth of a nation. World wars, the entire war economy that the United States uses to defend its nation in the case of the First World War, Europe in the case of the Second World War, with the threat to Hawaii, the Pacific world, and troops in the old continent, forces us to rethink a textile industry into a satellite for production of military clothing, of denim. It is one of the world capitals of indigo, of denim, and a set of textile materials which were used consecutively for world wars, and in Korea produced proudly in Medellín to dress the troops of allied armies. Although while the world was at war, textile companies in Medellín produced as a contribution here the uniforms for millions of troops around the world. And electrification has to reach this industry. We have Paulistas here, there are people here in the textile capitals of Mexico, the great Argentina, who understand what it means to electrify the loom, the electrified loom for Coltejer, for Fabricato, for Tejicondor, for Única, for the great pores of the industry with the immense amount of labor that generated, represented the revolution of the city, producing clothes, decorative textiles, industrial clothes for an entire continent, textile capital of the Americas. Our textile cluster is probably rivaled only by Sao Paulo in terms of production. And let's think of the size of the state of Sao Paulo and its demographics, and still what colors, what rainbow taken from our flowers, of our nature, of eternal spring, could produce the most important textile cluster of this sector of Latin America.
And in Argentina, they call it Villa Miseria. In Brazil, favelas. Those subnormal neighborhoods, places where, of course, the displacements that are due to the internal conflicts, wars, and the attraction of those wonder cities that were offering clean water, electric power, and cultural services amongst Colombia, mandated many populations to create subnormal neighborhoods, or kind of neighborhoods that were surrounded by misery and that were crippling future issues for our city. A city of migrants, of displaced peoples, a city of pain, if you will, but here they found the possibility of remaking their lives. We, of course, touched the bottom towards the end of the 70s, and precisely due to all that young population, many of them without the possibility of assimilating culture, education, with the social well-being that the city was creating, they started to enroll themselves in the armies of death. This is a scene of Rodrigo de, a documentary of youth hitmen and children violence, where children from those misery smart villages were surrounded by the armies of death. Drug dealing landed in the city at the beginning of the 80s, even if it brought evenwards some kind of background of the commerce of cannabis from the city of Santa Marta, but soonly the possibility of creating more money in a big city to do it. And with people that were gifted not of greed but talent to be able to look for richness, found in Medellín its place in the world, and the armies would be formed by killer teenagers. We, of course, touched the bottom, and I'm sorry for the crude scene. In the floor, in a pool of blood, we had the scientist, the philanthropist, the doctor, the social doctor, the most important person of Antioquia, Héctor Abad Gómez. His son, a contemporary writer, Héctor Abad Faciolince. His mother, the niece of our Archbishop. All his wife and children were around the body of the man, the scientist, the most loved man of Antioquia, that obviously became an immoral bottom for that pain that our city was feeling in the 80s. The desolation of this picture says everything, and I want to invite you to listen in this wonderful narrative, the oblivion we will become, where his son tells this horrible scene. But we lived even worse things. Our great governor, Antonio Roldán, in his bulletproof Mercedes, is going to his residence in the Palace of Government, and his car jumps in the air. The governor is, of course, dismembered. Part of his body is left in the street, and we lose our leader in the middle of the streets of Medellín, and amongst a subterranean bomb that was done for his car. I wanted to call this picture Without Limits. What can we think when the criminal world has gotten to the worst part, where they killed the scientist, the most important social leader of our region, and be able to kill our governor that was elected by the citizens? We look at the sky. We declare ourselves a Christian city. It's due to our Spaniard origins. Some others say that it could be due to the Jewish inheritance of second generation that migrated towards the city. But we started to look at the skies, and we started to think on the renewal work. What about an airport? What about going out of this small airport that we had amongst the mountains, where we only had 3 flights to Bogota? We wanted to think in grand. Our airport has been seen in more than 50 kilometers. We didn't have any tunnels. We didn't have highways. But we looked at the skies. We wanted to fly. Ask forgiveness. Some kind of forgiveness for all the crimes that were happening in our lands. Our international airport, the most modern airport of Colombia, a design of 1985, in the form of a horseshoe, a non-conventional airport at 2,200 meters above sea level, was created the International Airport José María Córdoba. believe that the dialectics of the great public works helps to redeem when there is huge pain. We thought in the New Deals of Franklin Roosevelt that took us out of depression. We wanted for all Antioquia to come out with their tools in hand to start rebuilding its highways and rebuild Medellin. Our highway towards Bogota approached us after we had a month of traveling, a week of traveling, and then 3 days of travel to only 8 hours of distance in 1985. We also spoke about that weakness in electric power, where the inheritance of Castilla and indigenous inheritance showed us how to be the best workers around thread in Latin America. So we decided to create a network of energy, of power, where water and electrical power became one. They called it the electrical generator in Guatapé, from Guatapé to El Peñol to Porce 1, 2, and 3, and today to the marvelous Hidroituango that is about to generate 22% of the potential hydroelectric power of the nation. Antioquia, a generator of power. The rivers that are born close to Medellin illuminate Santa Cruz de la Sierra, illuminate Piura, Guayaquil, Cuenca. It gets through interconnection to Panama. We're already in Guatemala, Honduras, in the Dike of Panama, and everything covered through our Mesoamerican. ESA, the energy company, is a great interconnector for the electrical power for this side of Mesoamerica. That's what we are, Mesoamerica. The first city that thought, as soon as they reached the first million of inhabitants, to have a massive system of transportation of world class. We called Siemens, we called Intracanales, we called Pregiro, consortiums of a high level from Italy, Germany, and Spain that came together to build a wonderful metro, a metro that has been the envy of the rest of the cities of Colombia, considering that my other city, my beautiful Bogota, is just in the conversations to start with its first line. Compared to this, Medellin for 20 years has had every morning transporting through its valley of dream, through 33 stations, through the most amazing railroad held by Siemens management and Pregiro, Intracanales, one of the metros that has generated a culture of health, cleaning, respect. It's not even allowed to have informal commerce there, because there is a pact of a social contract of trying to keep this metro clean. The infinite city of the eternal spring, a city with the most spectacular metros in terms of care, self-care, and metro culture. This was my home for 8 years as the private secretary of the governor of this state. I lived in these buildings day and night, receiving news of pain, of the different natural tragedies or the internal war that we lived, but also proudly taking high the flag of Antioquia from the roofs of our great administrational center. That's how we wanted to remind the origin, that Mesoamerican origin, an origin in a neo-Magian kind of form. We created modern pyramids that were representing the power of Antioquia and Medellin. Our major hall and the site of the government palace, the site of Alpujarra. This was previously an unpresentable industrial site. It was drained, depured, and through a policy of conversion of agoras, of democratic spaces of encounter, we healed a historical center that was usually damaged and dangerous, and today it looks like one of the most modern of Latin America. That bad of Medellin with urbanism doesn't mean to abandon our old sites. One of the Art Deco buildings, the most beautiful ones that hosted by our government, that was adorned by the historical art frames of Pedronel, constitute the Museum of Antioquia, which is the recipient of the maximum donation of our great artist, Fernando Botero. And behind there, the Palace of Calibillo, the site of the governor of Antioquia that today became in the Palace of Fine Arts. All the institutional sites that hosted our institutional and democratical sites for 150 years are today a site of culture. one of the most spectacular forests of art that was donated by Botero, giving the possibility, having the master, this great artist, the possibility of donating his art to cities like Paris, London, Italy, Rome. Medellin has one of the most beautiful works of Botero in all Latin America. The transformation of the old market, the plaza of Cisnero became a plaza of lights, a spectacular site where in the old buildings now we have the site of the orchestra of Medellin. This is the park of lights that has started to show the transformation from the darkness towards light of the city, that we have gone from fear towards hope. That's declared on on those old places of scrapping of metal. The Valladera has become in a place where in the heat days of 35 degrees, the people can go and just walk through the water and sing songs of Juanes and Shakira. That's the park of the barefoot water, the park of the planetary, and a free air cinema where we can project movies in a place that was before a wasteland and now became in the park of desires, el Parque de los Deseos, the bed of renewing the city from that horror story and poverty. And that investment of our capital that was done through coffee, gold, and textiles, now through science and innovation, went to the train of science, and it became in Parque Explora one of the citadels of science, one of the most important places of Latin America, where we teach our children, our grown-ups, and our teenagers the importance of science in a territory that has a projection of inclusion and work for intellectualism. The most important aquarium of Southern America that was prized recently in the International Contest of Aquariums in Lisboa is absolutely a must-see in the visits of the city. But we won't have in the city of the orchideums, and a place that Linneo and the most important botanists of the world admired. We have the Orchideorama, where we can create the new gardens and compete against the Garden of Paris to be able to build the botanical garden of Medellin and its ultra-modern Orchideorama. How we also bet for culture. We wanted for the greatest architecture of our land, Giancarlo Gascianti, to design these great cliffs, these spectacular rocks that the Majesties Juan Carlos and Sofia inaugurated with emotion on that day, where I was working as the secretary of the governor. And it was really a matter of pride for us to be able to tell your real Majesties of Spain that our main library in the middle of the favelas, the old, most dangerous of favelas, would now become in the Biblioteca España, in the popular commune of Santo Domingo, one of the old dangerous bureaus that would now become a center of knowledge in the valley of Aurra. The city of Botero will not have the spectacular modern arts museum, but here we do have it, thanks to the part of the Bancolombia Group, Sudamericana, and other companies, where they gathered their strengths to be able to build a modern arts museum that would be at the head of the city, with one of the programs of education that the Modern Height program exalted as one of the most important of Latin America, the Museum of Fine Arts of Medellin, and its new site of Ciudad del Rio, an old industrial wasteland. We want to review the examples of industrial healing, the change of that fear and the attachment to hope and light. And I think in Bilbao, Leon, Barcelona, I think in Turin, and many examples of cities, and the recent Milan of the Expo 2015, that build the infrastructures, perhaps Seville, and others preserve, others fall into decay and deuse, and others are abandoned. But Medellin wanted to make of its transformation an exercise of urban reformation, but a permanent one. We count with the Exposition Center, the greatest of Latin America, that is integrated to the great building of the Public Utility Company of Medellin, the only city that has services or utilities of water, light, gas, and television in just one public utility that gives them and charges them through one ticket to all the citizens. the company of public utilities, the most efficient one of Latin America, that is integrated to the great center of arts and culture, a metropolitan theater for more than 3,000 people. Jose Gutierrez, formed next to the Congress plazas, Plaza Mayor of Medellín, becomes one of the most important sites for congresses and encounters of this side of the world. I want to present you Ciudad del Rio, which means the burying of the highways that on the side of the river of Medellín and parallel to the metro and the surface were moving the city as a cut that, as we saw in Lima, we thought the possibility of cleaning a river and even becoming something, transform it into something fishable, and to give it and transform it into a beach, just as we have seen in many other cities, had to do with cleaning the main river of the city. Fortunately, we have now 12 kilometers of gardens that will take this measure of sustainability and recovery of a space of a high traffic that has been buried, to be able to give Medellín a garden, a fabulous garden that will integrate all its society, named Parques del Rio. And of course, we couldn't be outside of the world of sports. We have been the site of the Bolivariano Games, and recently of the Panamericano Games. The structures of our sports citadel, Atanasio Girardot, are one of the most beautiful, with inspiration in Alvar Alto, where ASIPI and other constructors assessed the building of coliseums with a capacity of 100,000 spectators throughout the 5 sceneries. Make of our sports center one of the greatest ones of Latin America. How do we research in the society of tomorrow? How do we create research groups, investigation groups? How can we emulate that think tank of creativity like the Technological of Monterrey or the UA or the University of Sao Paulo? In the University of Antioquia, we wanted to create a city of labs of a world class with the support of the Cornell University and Berkeley University as great sponsors. We have the greatest center of labs of the urban area in Mesoamerica between Mexico and Argentina. Labs of research of the University of Antioquia, where the patents in the scientific field are produced every day. A city of invention, creativity, a city where intellectual property and industrial property belong home. The library that has migrated to digital work, the Central Library Alejandro Chavarria, which is one of the epicenters of knowledge of our region, and the private University of Economical Sciences that are highlighted in this city of Colombia, EAFIT. To tell you, in the middle of a congress, to go to visit malls seems to go against the organization, dear doctor, but I would say that the city that invented the way of acquiring, buying in a happy and creative way is Medellín. We are traders. We know how to sell, and we always try to make people to have fun while they're acquiring their goods and having and enjoying. We want to start closing saying that we have food centered in ourselves, in mazamorras, in sausages, chorizo, in arepa, in frijoles. And we haven't left this place in more than 200 years. And the challenge of showing an innovating city, a creative city, a city that dialogues with the world, has made us become in a gastronomical district with worldwide fame. And I want to finish these reflections with what I love this city, saying that we're happy to have you here, but we want to describe this cloth, the hat of aguadas, the cape that protects the neck from heat and cold, the paruma that covers the juice of the copy when they fall over our pants, our shoes, the great bag that comes in the front, that comes from the verb of to carry, to be able for the miner, the farmer, and the grower of coffee to go and to take the Hispanic naipes, and of course their defense in money. to reinforce the machete or the great knife to open the forest. That's the friend of every Antiochian farmer. The mule, our emblematic and authentic symbol. The night of Medellín is a 24-hour city, and Botero could not be absent from this party, reggaeton, salsa, cumbia villera, however you want to call it. Here we have the couple of dances in the Medellín of the evening and life.
She was 20 years old when she went naked on the lands, the grasses of the Aburra Valley. She was the daughter of one of the most traditional families of this, my city, Miss Deborah Arango Perez, and she was censored, expatriated. Today she is the most important painter of Colombia of all times. She is in our bills, and she is there as a reminder that Antiochian women, the women in Medellín, have dreamt of this magical mountain. She dreamt it first, and she will forever be our icon in the form of a woman naked on the grass, dreaming of the magic mountain. The great Deborah Arango. Welcome to the City of Life. Thank you for being here.
Bueno, ahora los invitamos a...
And now we invite you to go to the Pepe Terrace to enjoy our cocktail. And of course, tomorrow we will meet you at 6:30 a.m. for those of you who want to participate in the 5K. And at 9 in this very Antioquia Hall, the first panel of the day, the forms that introduce strategies for the protection of industrial designs. Enjoy these sessions. Thank you and welcome.